Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Got a good Friday show for you. I don't know which is the bigger movie season, summer or fall. I think summer is like blockbuster season and the high-quality movies come out in the fall. I'm not sure about that, but Deacon Stephen Graydonis is going to be with us the second hour, and we will talk about the movies that are out now and coming up, and what he, I mean, a member of the New York Film Critics Circle and a longtime film critic for the National Catholic Register. And so we'll get his take on what's coming out, what you should see, what you should avoid. This hour, however, a little bit of bonus open forum for you with Tim Staples. Tim Staples here with us for this hour, 888-318-7884. Tim, of course, senior apologist at Catholic Answers and the author of Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines. Hello, Mr. Staples.
Hello, Dr. Cy. Gosh, I keep giving you a PhD, don't I?
Yes.
Cy Kellett. It is good to be here with you. Hey, there's two of us on that screen. That's amazing.
I'm glad you're impressed with the technology.
I am.
It's like a child. Oh, look, pictures. They move.
Cy's right next to me over there.
888-318-7884 is the number. 888-31-TRUTH. The open forum means whatever question you've got. You got a question about Catholic faith, Catholic people, Catholic traditions. You want to know about the Bible, about Jesus, about God, morals, whatever. 888-318-7884. I don't know if there's any seats left on the bus, but I know Tim's going to the Holy Land coming up. When do you go, Tim?
I am, and I'm so excited because my wife is going with me. Last year, we couldn't take Val, and this year we can, so this is going to be exciting. And I do think we've got a couple, maybe 3 seats left. So, folks, this is exciting. Footsteps of Jesus. You can go to harvestjourneys.com and then search Footsteps of Jesus with Tim Staples, and you'll get the whole write-up there. But we're talking November 10th to 20th. That's 11 days in the Holy Land, and then you can extend 2 extra days. We're going into Jordan, and it is really exciting. I have the talks all lined up where we're going to be going. We'll begin in heaven with the Blessed Trinity, and then we're going to work as the Catechetical Directory tells us to as Catholics in the hierarchy of truth from Trinity, a Christocentric Trinitarian theology, and down we will go to Bethlehem and experience the birth of our blessed Lord. And when you go to the Church of the Nativity, oh my goodness, get ready, folks. It is beyond belief to be talking about it and then to experience it. And that's what we'll do throughout those 11 days as we go from site to site and experience the places where Jesus ministered, where he preached the Sermon on the Mount, where he fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and on down to Jerusalem and resurrection. And then, the extension into Jordan takes us, in a sense, beyond and the establishment of the church and our calling to change the world. So, folks, there are a few seats left. So check out harvestjourneys.com online. And remember, it's Footsteps of Jesus with Tim Staples. And Cy Kellett, I'll guarantee, I've said this over and over, but if you go on this, it will be a life-changing experience. It was for me last year, and I was leading the thing, and I expect it to be even better this year. So give us a call, folks, or go to that website.
harvestjourneys.com. The number 888-318-7884. Already lots of calls. So I think off to the phones we go. Andrew is just up the road from us 7 hours or so in Sacramento, California, listening on Catholic.com. Andrew, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Tim Staples.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi, Tim. How are you? I think I have a question that only you can answer.
All right. I'll give it my best shot.
Okay. So I'm Catholic. I'm a committed Catholic. I know my faith pretty well. I have an opportunity to do online schooling through specific schools because of my job. I get a reimbursement. However, there are colleges like Grand Canyon University. I don't know if I should say the name.
Right.
But I would love to take theology or Bible classes. What are your thoughts on Catholics that take programs like that?
Yeah, well, I'll give you my take. I am all in favor when it comes to friends like our friend, Dr. Barber, who he's a tremendous scripture scholar, and he actually got his PhD in sacred scripture from Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena. Now, he rocked their world going through and getting his PhD. He is a true scholar and actually evangelized at Fuller all through his attaining that PhD. So, in that context, I have no problem with that. Of course, I would have to throw out the caveat, unless someone is really strong in their Catholic faith, it's not wise. You want to go, if you're going to learn and go deeper in your faith, you really need to have a place where you're learning from Catholics, right? So, that's my take on the thing. As I hear so many stories of as an apologist, we get the stories from parents who have lost a child to whatever denomination or Christian sect because they went to a Protestant or some sort of sectarian school, and they end up getting evangelized themselves. So, that it's not a carte blanche condemnation, because of course I can't do that. The church doesn't do that. So it's really a matter of prudential judgment that each has to make, the decision, and hopefully in much prayer and perhaps consulting a spiritual director. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I am a staunch Catholic, even a little combative. I don't want to be that way, but I would. The purpose of going is I want to know what they know more fully to be able to fight against it. I mean, I don't know how that sounds, but I also don't want to be a scandal to people that know I'm Catholic, and then I'm doing that as well. So,
right. Hey, there's certainly there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's a similar question. Think about it to those who say, can I go to an Assembly of God Sunday service, right? And of course we would not say a carte blanche no to that. I know I've done it in order to evangelize. I've gone with friends and what. Now, of course, I go to Mass and I cannot receive any sacramentals from them. Of course, they don't have sacraments, but we can't receive their communion or anything like that, because that would be a lie, number one, because to receive their communion is saying I'm in communion with them and their brand of Christianity, which I'm not. So, of course, we can't do that as Catholics, but there's nothing wrong with going. I've gone to, I remember going to a tent crusade and sitting in and listening and then evangelizing, and it's kind of fun. There was another guy that used to do that. I can't remember. Oh, St. Paul, that was him, right? Remember, he would go to the synagogues quite regularly, and he became many times the center of attention. So certainly there's nothing wrong with these things. But, brother, we always want to toss out the caveats, because if you have someone who is struggling with the faith, for example, it's not wise to go to one of those gatherings, because that can be a near occasion of sin. It's something we usually use in moral theology, but it is a near occasion if you're putting your faith in danger. But if you're going there to evangelize, 2 thumbs up. You have St. Paul as your icon.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks very much for the call. That brings us to the first break. We'll take a quick break and be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
Catch Catholic Answers Live anytime at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel.
Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN.
Visit today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. I don't know if that came out right or not. Tim Staples is our guest this hour. Next hour, Deacon Stephen Graydonis will be with us. And if you got questions about the movies that are coming up or movies that are out now in the theater, that's your perfect opportunity to talk to both a deacon and a renowned film critic next hour. If you've got a question for Tim this hour, the number is 888-318-7884. And anybody can call. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be Christian. You don't have to be a believer of any kind. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, you're welcome here. 888-318-7884. It's the Feast of the Holy Archangels. Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael. That is not the Ninja Turtles. That is the Holy Archangels. And St. Michael the Archangel was the inspiration for our Shield Week sale going on through tomorrow night, midnight Honolulu time. And make sure you get on over to shop.catholic.com and take advantage of the Shield Week sale. Just look for the Shield Week category. More than 500 items are on sale. And remember, use the promo code St. Michael. That's just ST Michael with no punctuation or anything. ST Michael, and you'll save 30% off your order. Don't miss out on what can only be called, Carrie had to do this. He just had to do this. Don't miss out on what can only be called an angelic savings opportunity. Once again, open forum, Tim Staples, our guest, 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. We say open forum is open to anyone. We also mean to say that it is open to those who might want to have a more challenging question. And I think sometimes people are a little bit, certainly there are people who are just by nature combative. But if you are not combative, but you do want to ask a question about, something that might be slightly controversial, or you just really like to get under the Catholic idea and maybe challenge it with your understanding of the faith, that's very, very welcome. It's all welcome. 888-318-7884 is the number. Oh, I was supposed to also tell you, you get rewards over at Catholic Answers at shop.catholic.com now. You can earn points that you turn into free money that you can spend in the shop. So it's an angelic opportunity to get points. Just check it out at shop.catholic.com/rewards. It's an angelic opportunity. Carrie gives me these things to say, and I don't know if it's just because he likes to hear me say them or exactly why, but there's an angelic opportunity over at the shop today. Tim, let's see. We spoke to Andrew, so let's go to Engelbert in New Zealand. All right, watching on YouTube. Engelbert, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Yes.
Thanks for taking my call. I missed out when you came to New Zealand, but I'm definitely not going to miss out when you're here, Cy, on Monday and Tuesday, and I shall be seeing you on both days. We are all very excited to have you here in New Zealand soon.
Oh, thank you very much. You should maybe just go Tuesday, because Monday I have to get off the plane and come do a talk after. I don't know how good the Monday one is going to be, Engelbert. I got to be honest with you.
You're going to be
Tuesday,
amazing. We are just because we're all praying for you. You're going to be amazing.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate it. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I cannot wait to see everybody in New Zealand. So thanks very much. I'll see you Monday.
Cool. See you Monday. Tim,
yes.
My question for you is on the genealogy of Jesus. in the
Yes.
Gospels of Matthew and Luke.
Right.
Especially, how do you reconcile them? And the one difference that I'd like to know about is using Nathan as the son of David in Luke and Solomon as the son of David in Matthew.
Right. I think for me, the one that made the most sense for me, and I should note that when I was Protestant, I used to hold to these were two genealogical lines, one Luke being Mary's and Matthew's being Jesus's, but that is pretty much rejected carte blanche in Catholic circles. The one that I found convincing is the one that Eusebius of Caesarea and quite a few fathers of the church held, and it goes very, very far back. You find arguments for this, at least Eusebius is referencing arguments that go all the way back to the late 1st, early 2nd century. So this one seems to be the one that makes the most sense, and that is that when you see the key sort of departure is when the genealogies talk about Eli and Jacob in the genealogical line. According to Eusebius, Eli or Heli were actually brothers or half-brothers, and one of them died childless, and the other married the widow, and they had a child on behalf of the deceased brother, and that's in accordance with the Levirate law of Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. And so you have a discrepancy that starts there, but it doesn't start with Nathan. It actually starts with a ancient, or right at the time of Christ, shortly before, and then those genealogies are traced back differently, so that Matthew traces the physical lineage, and that makes sense because Matthew is defending the genealogy of Christ from the perspective of him being the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Old Testament, son of David prophecies, and so forth. So his emphasis is more on the line of kings that come from the loins of Solomon, so to speak. Whereas Luke is referring to the legal line, and this kind of fits as well because, Matthew is a Jewish Christian and Luke is a Gentile. And so Luke is more interested in legal lines because, of course, we Gentiles are grafted into the vine, so to speak. We're not sons of Abraham in accordance with the flesh, but we've been grafted in. And so Luke's genealogy goes back through the legal connection, whereas, in other words, when the brother died childless, and then the next brother had a child, and that child belonged to the first brother, that was a sort of legal imputation in accordance with Deuteronomy 25, right? So Luke is more interested in that sort of legal imputation because that's kind of the Gentile way of looking at things, whereas Matthew is more interested in proving that Jesus is the Messiah. And of course, both genealogies prove that as well, but it's just a matter of looking at the genealogy from the perspective of the fulfillment of the Levirate law versus the literal fleshly line that goes all the way back to David. So that's kind of, to me anyway, that's the best way. And again, I think some people get wrong the idea that because one has the line from Nathan, then somehow there's a finagling back there, and I don't think you have to go back there. I think where the where the difference happens is just in the generation before Joseph.
Okay, Engelbert?
I know it gets a little complicated, but let me recommend to you, go to Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History, and it's in Book 1, Section 7, and you can read Eusebius, of course, is the great 4th century historian, and he's coming from a historical perspective, and this was what was most compelling to him because, of course, he did the research historically, and of course, he quotes a late 1st, early 2nd century source in the process. But thanks for your call, brother.
Thank you, Engelbert. As I said, looking forward to seeing you in a few days in New Zealand, and thank you very much for the call. Aaron is in Tulsa, Oklahoma, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. Aaron, go ahead with your question for Tim.
Hi, I and was in the Evangelical Protestant Church all my life before then. One of the few things that I have found difficult to defend with my Protestant family when they bring it up is that near where I grew up, there is a Vietnamese Catholic seminary called the Congregation of the Mother Co-Redemptrix.
Yes.
And, of course, they come to me and say, well, Mary was not a co-redeemer with Christ. Surely you don't believe that. And I say, well, no, we don't believe that, but I don't really understand why that terminology is allowed, or is it encouraged, and kind of what the genesis of it was.
Sure. Great question. And yeah, the language has been used very rarely, but it has been used on the level of the ordinary magisterium. Pope Leo XIII, for example, used that terminology, not exactly co-redemptrix, but equivalent language. And it's generally been understood, at least the theology, and I think this is the key point, the theology of co-redemptrix is rock solid. And, no Catholic theologian worth his salt is going to deny that. And there's a lot of confusion, unfortunately, that's caused by the term, and this is why, beginning with Pope Benedict XVI, he became the first to really be vocal. And in fact, it was before, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, when he was prefect of the then CDF, now DDF, Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, he just gave a real thumbs down to the term co-redemptrix. In fact, he did an interview. It was in one of his interview books. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It's not coming to my mind right now. It'll probably pop in there. But he talked about this very issue, and he said the language is one of confusion, even though the theology of it is fine. So, for example, if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9, St. Paul refers to him and Apollos as co-laborers with Christ, right? Sunergoi in Greek. And nobody should have a problem with him saying that they're co-laborers, because co, there in Greek, it's sun ergoi, and that comes down into Latin as co, and that's where co-redemptrix and such will come from, or co-workers. Co doesn't mean equal, as in, on the same plane. It simply means with. So St. Paul is saying that he is laboring, co-laborer, he and Apollos are co-laborers with Christ, not in the sense of they're equal. Rather, they are cooperating with Jesus Christ, and they are instrumental causes. And that's important in biblical theology to understand the causal relationship between, and whether we're talking about an instrumental cause, like in the case of a priest saying Mass, he's an instrumental cause in bringing about the transubstantiation of the sacred species into the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord. There's a real causality here. Now, it's instrumental because God is the ultimate power, and really the priest, all he has to do is just not get in the way and make the thing invalid, and you have Jesus, and he can't make it better Jesus or more effective, right? That's what we mean by instrumental cause. Now, we're also secondary causes, and in that sense, like us evangelizing right now, we can do better or worse. We can mess things up and impede the work of evangelization. In that sense, confuse people instead of bringing them to the truth. Right? But in both cases of instrumental causality, secondary causality, there's real causality here. And so there's a sense in which we can say we are all co-laborers. Paul's talking about his apostolic work, but we're all co-laborers with Christ. This is why St. Paul would say in Colossians 1:24, for example, I fill up that which is lacking in the sufferings of Christ in my body, for his body, which is the church. I hear the music has started. So please hang on through the break if you can, because I really want to put a bow on this, and hopefully we can tie it all together.
Couple lines open. It's open forum, 888-318-7884.
Why We're Catholic is the one book you can hand to anyone to invite them into or back to the Catholic faith. With more than 400,000 copies sold, Trent Horn's book has had a #1 ranking on Amazon.com for 5 years running. Now available in softcover, bulk cases, ebook, and on Audible. Find out what the excitement is all about. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com or visit whywearecatholic.com.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Are you scared to talk about abortion? Don't worry, almost everyone is. You can overcome this fear as Trent Horn shows in the newly revised and expanded second edition of Persuasive Pro-Life. With a little knowledge and a few proven techniques, you can become a bold and effective apologist for life. Visit shop.catholic.com to order your copy of Persuasive Pro-Life and never again be afraid to speak up. Also available at good Catholic bookstores. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Tim Staples is our guest. It's open forum this hour. You are welcome to call with whatever question you have about the Catholic faith. Aaron in Tulsa was having trouble with the occasional use of the phrase co-redemptrix in the Catholic Church to refer to Mary. Right. And Tim, you were about to put a bow on your answer.
Yeah, and so I was making the analogy between St. Paul referring to he and Apollos as co-laborers with Christ in order to show that there's really not a theological problem with using the term co-redemptrix when it's understood properly. Just as co-laborer with Paul, referring to himself and Apollos as co-laborers with Christ, they're not somehow making themselves equal with Christ, but the term simply means with. We are co-laborers. We have a causal relationship in that sense, whether it be an instrumental causality or a secondary causality. There is real causality there. Without the priest, there's no Eucharist, right? And without us going out and evangelizing, souls can indeed be lost because God has called us to be his hands and feet in this world. So now with that as a basic understanding, it's not really biblically or theologically contrary to the faith to use the term. Why is it that in recent years the church has moved away from that language? And again, it really started in a strong way anyway with Cardinal Ratzinger when he was head of or prefect of the then CDF, now the DDF. He answered this very question and said, speaking as prefect of the CDF, he said that the language of co-redemptrix, even though the theology behind it is okay, is too confusing, because it is, especially with regard to our Protestant friends. I'm telling you, I've talked to them, and we all have here for many, many years, and the confusion doesn't seem to go away. And you also find some confusion within the Catholic Church because of that language as well. And so the church has moved away from that. And what Cardinal Ratzinger said, and John Paul would continue on this trajectory, and now Pope Francis has said it quite strongly as well, is that we don't want to use that language because Cardinal Ratzinger said we have other titles of Our Blessed Lady that get at the concept of co-redemptrix, and that is that Mary certainly, in the most dramatic way, cooperated with the grace of God. I mean, if Paul is a co-laborer with Christ, Mary is even more so, because Mary cooperated with Christ in bringing Jesus into the world and to us all. And she continued that cooperation throughout his 3 years of ministry, up to and including the foot of the cross, where she would suffer with him in fulfillment of the prophecy of Simeon in Luke chapter 2, verses 34 and 35, when Simeon said, "Behold, this child is set for the fall and rising again of many in Israel, and to be a sign of contradiction which shall be spoken against, and a sword will pierce your soul," referring to Mary, "that the thoughts of many hearts may be manifest." I mean, there you have the prophecy that both Christ and Mary would suffer at the foot of the cross. Of course, Jesus suffering as a red martyr, so to speak, right, because he shed his blood. Mary as a white martyr, the sword pierced her soul, not her body, like it did with Jesus. But they each suffered for the same many that are referred to there, and that is the entirety of the people of God who are receiving our blessed Lord in the Eucharist. And of course, beyond that, Jesus suffered and died for everyone. Mary, of course, suffered as well and spiritually died for us all as well. So here's the point. You know, Pope St. John Paul the Great said it beautifully in his masterful encyclical letter. I recommend everybody, if you haven't read it, Salvifici Doloris. Absolutely beautiful, as well as theologically off the charts, just incredible. But I believe it's in section 25 of that document where Pope St. John Paul says that Mary's sufferings were so integrally interwoven with Christ at the foot of the cross that they became, and she became, a participant in the redemption of all, right? And so through her suffering with Jesus in fulfillment of the prophecy of Simeon, what happens? She gives birth to John, right? Jesus says to John, whose mother was there, by the way. She was standing a bit back in the background there. What is that? Like Matthew, I want to say 27, 56-ish in there. She's standing a bit back, but she's there. And yet Jesus says to John, "Behold your mother." And it's not his physical mother, but Mary is his mother. And of course, we know John is standing there in the place of all of us. And John kind of confirms that in the book of Revelation, where in Revelation chapter 12, which John also wrote, he has in verses 4 and 5, you know, the woman who is Mary giving birth to the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And then in verse 17, she gives birth to all of us who have the testimony of Jesus Christ and keep his commandments. And so we know from the pen of St. John, the Revelator, that she suffered and died spiritually with her son, giving birth to all of us, and she continues to do so. So, I mean, that is what we're talking about when we say the theology of co-redemptrix is clearly there. It's simply the term, right? And so, again, Cardinal Ratzinger says we have other titles that get at the theology of it without the confusing term of co-redemptrix, which so many think, you know, you're putting Mary on a par with Jesus, and we do. We have, you know, Pope St. Paul VI declared Mary Mother of the Church. That's a beautiful image of how she gives birth to all of us, the entirety of the church. We have also the Mother of the Eucharist, which is a more recent title, which really connects Mary's maternity with our salvation in that she's connected to us every time we receive the Eucharist. And of course, we can talk about, you know, she's the mother of the universe. She's the mother. But I think Pope Francis kind of nailed it when he said that in Scripture, all of the dignities of the Blessed Virgin Mary are focused around that image of the mother. She's a mother, right? And so when she's being revealed to be involved in God's plan of salvation, how does she do that? She gives birth, right? So it's better, more understandable, and in keeping with sacred Scripture, says Pope Francis, if we keep the titles of the Blessed Virgin Mary centered on that essential component of what she is, a mother. And co-redemptrix seems to get away from that and cause confusion. Now, you know, I have to say, Aaron, I love the title co-redemptrix. I always have. And, you know, I mentioned that in my book that, you know, again, the theology is not the problem, it's the confusion. And hey, Holy Mother Church is looking out for all of her children. And so that's why in my own theology, I have moved away from co-redemptrix as well. And I explain Mary's role in God's plan of salvation the way in keeping with the way the church has moved on that. So don't let anybody say, you know, oh, Leo the 13th was wrong or this or that. No, the theology is not wrong of co-redemptrix. It's simply the title that is confusing, and that's why we've moved away from it.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that call. Lots of folks still on the line, so off we go to Virginia, where Joe is listening to EWTN, Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Joe, we're getting near a break, so if you can be kind of quick with your question, that'll help Tim have time to answer it.
Hey, thank you for having me on here. I'll lead straight to the question. Do you, in your personal belief, think that there will be a third revival of the faith?
A third revival? I don't know what
Yes, sir.
I don't know what you're referring to are the first two revivals.
Well, back in when I first started, my faith is in a Protestant community, and we've learned about how we had the first and second Great Awakening, and
I got you.
I come to join the military back, you know, in the early 90s, and every port that I've ever visited, there was always a Catholic church. Most of the priests or chaplains for the military were predominantly Catholic, and I've had tremendous support and help as far as processing my PTSD and everything that I've ever experienced in the military was, you know, assisted through the Catholic Church, and I've since have frequent Catholic churches throughout my life. Many friends as well. We've all gathered and had conversations about, you know, we all believe in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we all believe in one communion. We all believe that He he died, rose again, or whatever, and we once will all meet again. Then how is it that we have all these denominations that believe in so much, but we're so all divided?
Yeah.
And
okay. So that does seem
there
like
you go.
That's a
now I understand the question, and I appreciate the call, because of course when you're talking about the Great Awakenings, you're talking about Protestant revivals in the 1800s, around 1800 and 1840. So that would be kind of alien to our Catholic audience here of what you're talking about. And that was kind of a renewal among certain Protestant sects. But I'm going to kind of bypass that and get to what I think is the core of your question. And do I believe we're going to have a huge return of Protestants to our one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church? And I believe that's already happening. I think we've seen extraordinary numbers of conversions, and a lot of it is attributable to the renewal of apologetics in Catholicism. And I've got to give a shout out to my old boss, Carl Keating, who was a huge mover in the apologetic movement that began in the 70s and especially exploded in the 1980s. And now we've seen thousands and thousands of Protestant pastors, ministers, men and women of all different faiths, and on an interfaith level as well. The conversions have been extraordinary. But to focus on your question about Protestantism, I agree with you that any kind of awakening, if I can use that term here, has to start with what we agree on. I think whenever we're evangelizing, I mean, I think of St. Paul on Mars Hill in Acts chapter 17. What does he do? You know, he's speaking to a bunch of Stoics and skeptics, and so what does he do? He quotes a couple of Stoics in Aratus and Epimenides in order to get the conversation going. And so, you know, we as Catholics and Protestants, we have so much more that unites us. You mentioned, you know, we have the Bible, sacred scripture. We have the Blessed Trinity, which is the central mystery of the Catholic Christian faith and the Christian faith in general. We have the hypostatic union, the incarnation, and the hypostatic union, that is, Christ is fully God, fully man, hypostatically joined in one person. We have the redemption of Christ, that he is the propitiation for our sins, and not only our sins, but the sins of the whole world. And, you know, and we could go on and on. There's a whole lot that unites us. But having said that, brother, we also have to acknowledge there is a lot that divides us, and that's the sticking point. Because there can be no true joining as one in full communion with Jesus Christ without there being a full understanding and full communion with his church, which is, we believe, as an historical fact, the Catholic Church. I mean, it's simply an historical fact, and I know my Orthodox friends will argue with me on that point, but hey, let's go. Let's talk about it, right? But we believe as a historical fact, Jesus established one church. He didn't establish 50,000 or 33,000 or however many, nobody knows, denominations that exist today. Jesus prophesied in John 10:16 there would be one fold and one shepherd. And that one shepherd was Jesus Christ, who made Peter his one shepherd. In John 10:16 and John 21:15 through 17, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Feed my lambs, shepherd my sheep, feed my sheep. So he makes Peter the shepherd over the entirety of Jesus' own flock, and his successors, the popes, have been that one shepherd for the last 2,000 years. And so this is why I believe, as St. Cyprian of Carthage taught it in the 3rd century, the Bishop of Rome, the Church of Rome, is the principle of unity for the people of God. And so apart from a union with the Bishop of Rome and all the bishops who are in union with him, you cannot have that unity that you're talking about. And then if you follow through on all of the divisions, now we've talked about the agreements we have, but unfortunately the divisions are large as well. I say what joins us is more extensive than what divides us, but we have to acknowledge the disagreements we have over sacraments, whether there are any, right? Or there's just two in the case of Lutherans, or, absolutely none among most evangelicals and all fundamentalists and so many of our Protestant friends, right? Our disagreements over soteriology, the nature of salvation. How do you get to heaven? Huge. We have disagreements when it comes to morals. Unfortunately, today, my goodness, we disagree with our Protestant friends, unfortunately, over abortion. Every denomination that there is in existence today, at least that I'm aware of, including the Southern Baptists, who are probably closest to us on abortion, but even they acknowledge abortion is okay if the life of the mother is in danger, which is really unfortunate. But most Protestant denominations have little to no problem with abortion. I mean, my goodness, and contraception, and now with homosexual marriage, homosexual acts, transgender, there's more and more, unfortunately, when it comes to the morals issues of the day, where we don't agree. And, whether it's sacraments, salvation, Mary, the communion of saints, praying to saints, and more we could talk about, these are substantive issues that have serious ramifications that have to be dealt with before we can have the kind of unity that Jesus proclaimed already exists in the true Church of Jesus Christ, which is the Catholic Church. We have that unity, my friend, and we've had it for 2,000 years. Unfortunately, men like John Calvin, Martin Luther, and later, we could go, Knox, Zwingli, and then later Wesley, and the thousands who have split since, have split and split and split and lost more and more of that which is essential to our Catholic Christian faith. And so one of the things we're doing here at Catholic Answers is entering into the dialogue and helping folks to understand these things so we can bring everyone back to the ultimate source, so to speak, who is Jesus Christ and his church. I mean, if you go back to 1490, okay, everybody was Catholic. Now, of course, the Orthodox, we have to go back a little bit farther. We'll go back to the year 1000. But everybody was Catholic, okay? And so we really need to get back to the church that Jesus Christ established in order to have the unity that he wills for us.
Joe, we're going to have to leave it there because we got to take this break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
This is Archbishop Paul Coakley, the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul? And that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Each week on The World Over, Raymond Arroyo challenges listeners and viewers with important political and cultural reporting and analysis of a wide variety of topics of interest to Catholics and people of faith. And you can get news from the world over in your inbox every week. It's easy. Visit EWTN.com and click subscribe. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Well, back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. And Deacon Stephen Graydonis with us the second hour. We're going to talk about movies. We like to take a Friday, maybe every quarter or every third of a year or something, and talk with Deacon Graydonis. We got out of the habit a little bit around COVID, but we're back into it, and it's a great opportunity to get to talk about, well, the way the Catholic Church thinks about art, for one thing. So if you've got questions about movies coming up, hang on for the next hour. Right now, open forum. Tim Staples, our guest, and Michelle is in Massachusetts, listening on 89.3 FM. Michelle, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Hi. My question is, there are several healings that Jesus makes in the Gospels where he tells the people that he heals not to tell anyone that he healed them.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why that is.
Right. Great question. And that's, in theology, it's referred to as the messianic secret, right? And there's really several reasons. And different theologians will have a little bit of a different take on this, but I'll give you three general reasons why Jesus would have done that. And the first is because Jesus, if you think about it this way, you ever notice how if you tell a story and it's of a serious nature about an issue that's happened, and you tell somebody about it, and then they tell somebody else, and then they tell somebody else, and they tell somebody else, and we get about 10 somebodies down the road, you ever notice how the story often gets twisted, right? It's like playing the telephone game. We do this at the Staples household sometimes, where we'll just start with the kids, right? The 7 kids. And so, well, one's moved out now, so we're down to 6. But with the 6 kids, you tell one thing, and then they tell the other, and the other. And by the end of the line there, the thing gets completely discombobulated. So on one simple level, we can say Jesus wanted to keep this thing local as much as possible for accuracy's sake. But then when you add to that Jesus said even to the apostles, there are many more things that I would like to tell you, but you can't bear them right now. You can't handle them. But when the Comforter comes, look at John chapter, that would be 16, verses 7 and 13. But when the Comforter comes, the Holy Spirit, he will, verse 13 says, guide you into all truth. And this is one of the reasons why Jesus said to the apostles, don't go anywhere, you knuckleheads. Stay right here in Jerusalem until I send you the power of the Holy Spirit. So stay, don't go. Why? Because, of course, they need the Holy Spirit so that he would lead them into all truth, right? Those are the two major reasons. Now I'm trying to think of the third one, and I can't think of it right now. But I think that pretty much suffices. It's basically Jesus protecting the word and giving instructions to the apostles as to how the word and the integrity of the gospel is to be protected until he can send the Holy Spirit. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That makes sense. I am curious though, because he was God, so he knew when he told the leper, for example, that even though he told the leper not to tell anyone,
yes,
that the leper was going to go tell everyone.
That's right. And of course, that's an example, to my mind, of God gave us free will, and God is not going to run around and force everyone to obey what he said. And often, like with the Samaritan woman at the well, he didn't tell her, don't go tell anybody, but she sure did, right? Come see the man who has told my entire life. He's told everything there is to know about me, right? So of course that's going to happen, but Jesus is basically keeping it to a minimum for the reasons I stated before. And so that, whenever you have interplay between God and man, there's always that mystery of grace and free will involved. Even with prophecies, Cardinal Ratzinger, and by the way, I just thought of that book, Si. It was God and the World, where Cardinal Ratzinger was interviewed on Co-Redemptrix. And he also talks about, we got to go. The music is a hard stop there. but how that interaction between free will and grace sometimes affects prophecies, because prophecies can be modified at times because of the reality of free will.
Michelle, thank you for the question. Thanks to everybody who called. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to everyone, but that was pretty good, Tim. Thanks for a great hour.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. This was too much fun, Si. I'll see you next time.
Okay, and coming up, Deacon Stephen Graydonis on the movies of the autumn right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Steve Kellich, your host. And as promised, Deacon Stephen Greydonis is with us. Deacon Greydonis is a member of the New York Film Critics Circle. He's a deacon for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Newark. He's the creator of Decent Films. And for more than a decade, he was the award-winning National Catholic Register film critic. And we're very glad to have him. Deacon Stephen Greydonis, thanks for being back with us.
Cy, it's always a pleasure. Great to be here.
I was a little slow on the uptake. You have some fascinating things to talk to us about the most popular movies of the last, probably 20 years, maybe coming up on 25 years, all around the world. The Marvel movies, the Spider-Man movies. We'll get into all that. I want to get into that in a minute, but you've had a little bit of a change in your life. I know because I see the emails between you and Darren, and you're busy right now. What's the big change you've gone through?
So for almost as long as I've been on this radio show and doing Decent Films, and the two are basically coterminous. I started doing this show and I started Decent Films back in 2000. For almost that long, my day job has been in IT. I have worked behind a computer and built websites, and that was my day job. The IT sector has been under a lot of pressure in the last couple of years. It's been shedding tens of thousands of jobs. In my company, it's been shedding hundreds of jobs. And after many, many rounds of cuts, in January, my job went away, like many others. It was outsourced, and so it doesn't exist. And I had been thinking for a long time, for many years, and my wife Suzanne had been saying to me that, all of the other areas of my life that I've been developing, my work as a deacon, my religion studies, my writing, my film work, there had to be something there that I could do that would be more fulfilling to me, and maybe was what God wanted me to do. And when that job went away, I took that as a clear sign that God wanted me to.
That would be a sign.
I didn't look for another IT job. I was done with IT, and I went looking for other things. And I was surprised and delighted to find my calling, my new life. I feel like my professional life is starting this year, and wow. I am finally the Catholic theology teacher that I wanted to be. All the way back when I was a newlywed and started going to seminary. That was my thought. Maybe I'll wind up teaching religion in Catholic schools. And here I am.
What a great story arc. You've got you're not just a film critic now. You've got your own cinematic story arc now. Oh, that's great. Congratulations on all that. It wasn't artificial intelligence that did it, was it? It wasn't like they said, Stephen, the artificial intelligence can do it now.
Well, no. Artificial intelligence can't do what I do, but it is part of the whole instability in the field. It's part of the reason why so many companies are shedding jobs, because the future of IT is just so uncertain. 5 years ago, the major companies, Google and Microsoft and so forth, they were hiring people that they didn't need just as a competitive move to keep their competitors from hiring them. And now it's the opposite thing is happening. Yeah. They're shedding jobs.
The boom and the bust. They used to have it in the oil patch. Now they got it in the technology sector. You're still a deacon though, and you still love film. So will you continue to do film criticism, or is that on the back shelf now, or what?
Back burner would be a little bit more accurate than back shelf. I don't ever foresee not doing film commentary from a Catholic perspective. It goes too deep into who I am, and I love it so much. But right now I am learning a new job. I'm learning to be a theology teacher. I'm also teaching a course at Seton Hall University as an adjunct. And I'm speaking to you from the campus of Gonzaga University in Spokane, where I've come to do a conference, which is the subject that we're going to be talking about here on this show. And I've been preparing for this for months. So my film writing has gone by the wayside. I have not published a piece since I wrote about Mission Impossible for RogerEbert.com. That was the last thing I've written, not counting the talk that I'm giving tonight at Gonzaga.
And you liked Mission Impossible.
I love Mission Impossible.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you're talking about tonight then, because it has become a kind of, I don't know if it's a trend or if it's exactly what it is, but these movies now don't happen in one universe; they happen in a multiverse.
Right. And so at Gonzaga University, they have the Faith and Reason Institute, which puts on an annual faith, film, philosophy seminar. And this year's seminar's theme is multiverses and alternate realities. And the focus is on addressing this theme in movies and television and popular culture, obviously from a Catholic perspective with an eye to faith issues. And it really, this year, when you look at just the major superhero movies this year with multiverses, you have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is the continuation of the MCU multiverse saga. You have the second Spider-Verse movie, Across the Spider-Verse, which is a part one movie continuing in to the Beyond the Spider-Verse, release date currently unknown. And then it was a box office flop, and flopped with critics too. But even the DC Warner Brothers Flash solo movie uses the multiverse in interesting ways. And that's just this year. The phenomenon really got started back in 2016 with the first Doctor Strange movie by Scott Derrickson. And it's now it's huger than ever. It would be impossible to overstate the prominence of the multiverse at this time, particularly in superhero movies.
Okay, so to what do you attribute that? Would you attribute that more to storytellers are imitative and they imitate one another, and this says once this kind of genie is out of the bottle, people are going to grab it. It's a storytelling convention. People like it, or would you say it has something to do with the where science is now, so to speak, where the more and more scientists are probably since the 1990s willing to say maybe this isn't the only universe. Maybe this universe is one among many, or even some would say infinite numbers of universes. Or is there some other cause to which you attribute the flourishing of the multiverse narrative?
I think it's really a perfect storm of events, and some of them are scientific, some of them are cultural or imaginative. One of the obvious factors is just that the MCU in its Infinity Saga, the first three phases of the MCU universe, got huger and huger in scope until in the end it was Thanos versus everybody for the fate of half the lives in the universe. And if you need to keep building in scope in order to make the story stay compelling, the only thing you can do at that point is begin expanding into other universes. But there are also other factors, and you can also look at something like, Rick and Morty on television. There was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was huge last year, both at the box office and at the Oscars and with critics. So I think that there's more going on than that.
Yeah.
I think one factor probably is the increasing interconnectedness of the world through digital media, through technology. On the one hand, we are more connected than ever. We're more aware, as Miles Morales said in the first Spider-Verse movie, you're like me. We encounter people who are like us, who we recognize our tribe. We find the people that we can connect with, and even if they come from very different worlds, if they're very different from us in their background. But then also in the second Spider-Verse movie, particularly, it becomes a kind of a metaphor for the particular kind of alienation and loneliness that people experience in the digital age. The loneliness that comes from knowing that there are people out there who are like me, but I have no access to them.
Oh, what a wonderful and horrible point. I mean, that's a brilliant insight, but really a sad reality, isn't it? That
it is very sad, and there's a lot of sadness in the movie.
Yeah, that each of us is a sort of universe unto ourselves now. So other people just seem like a distant universe that I can't reach.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, so you have those metaphorical things going on. Some other speakers here at Gonzaga who have talked about it have connected the phenomenon to the social isolation and other social factors around COVID. And there's also something just about the way that people don't go away anymore in life. In 50 years ago, or even 30 years ago, if you had a romantic relationship in your youth, in your young adulthood that didn't work out, and you later married somebody else, chances are you never saw that person again that you had that connection with. But today, nobody goes away. Everybody's still right there, and that makes it much easier to entertain questions about what if. What if my life had gone in a different direction? What if, is it? And then that raises the idea of another version of you that's living out that life that you could have led.
Oh, didn't Gwyneth Paltrow make a movie, Sliding Doors, that was kind of like
Sliding Doors was one that was like that. There've been a number of movies that have pursued, and in a way, every multiverse movie asks that question to some extent.
Deacon Stephen Greydanus is our guest, a noted film critic himself, also now a theology teacher, but an opportunity to get to talk about this multiverse phenomenon. If you want to get in on the conversation, 888-318-7884 is the number, 888-318-7884. Deacon Greydanus, as you're speaking, you talk about the ever-expanding stakes of the Marvel universe, and the stakes become so big that now we need more than one universe to contain them. There's a certain way in which the story almost begins, it seems to me, to be undermined by this scope. But I want to leave that out there and ask you about it when we come back on the other side of the break. Deacon Stephen Greydanus, our guest, right back with more on Catholic Answers Live.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
You Choose Week is here.
We're Jerry and Debbie from Take Two on EWTN Radio, and it's your show, and all this week it's your topics.
You Choose Week is a week-long Take Two family topics celebration.
You can join the conversation on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie weekdays at noon and midnight Eastern on EWTN Radio, and find us online at take2show.com.
All week, your topics spark the conversation.
It's You Choose Week on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Oh, the pandemic messed up so many things, and one of the things that we lost track of was these enjoyable Friday conversations with Deacon Stephen Greydanus, film critic and deacon and teacher, and I'm glad to be able to have these conversations again. We're talking about this the real flowering of multiverses. I don't know how else to say it. There's everywhere you turn, there's a multiverse in movies, in TV. You mentioned Deacon Rick and Morty. So in cartoons or I don't know if you're supposed to say cartoons anymore. Maybe that's disrespectful. Animation and everywhere. But you did give the example of the battle against Thanos, and there does come a point, and I think it's the point, and if anybody has not seen every single Marvel movie, just please go out and see all of them before I finish this sentence. It comes at the point where Thor cuts off the head of our great enemy Thanos, and it's meaningless. And so you wonder about all this life and death at a certain magnitude. The significance of the struggles and the stories and all, it just kind of disappears because there's another universe where this is not happening.
And that's a real narratological concern. The concern is, how do you tell stories in a multiverse and keep the stakes relevant? How do you tell stories in a multiverse and create events that people care about? I think that those are really good questions. I do think that there are ways to do it. Whether the MCU is actually doing that is another question. I'll try to make this as brief as I can. An example of how I think the expansion of the MCU multiverse has harmed the sense of moral meaning in events. There's a thing that happens to all of us where in a particularly striking moment of our lives, we sense the hand of what we might call divine providence, or depending on our belief system, fate or karma or whatever it is. Seemingly chance events seem significant. You see it in the first Iron Man movie all the way back in 2008. Tony has survived an explosion, one of his own weapons almost killed him. And then he survived weeks of captivity by a terrorist group. And he has this insight where he says, I shouldn't be alive unless it was for a reason. And this is his motivation for becoming Iron Man. He feels as if, and he doesn't say it this way, but he feels as if the universe has challenged him to atone for his past sins. And that's not the only indication of this kind of thinking, this kind of seeing meaning in events. But then you get to the end of Loki season 1 on Disney Plus, and you discover that the TVA, the so-called Time Variance Authority, which is in charge of preserving the integrity of the sacred timeline supposedly created by these godlike timekeepers, that the narrative behind the whole TVA is a sham. The real person behind the so-called sacred timeline is the survivor of a multiversal war among countless different variants of himself. And his script is the reason that things happen in the MCU. So why did Tony survive being killed by one of his own weapons and then being captured by terrorists? There is a reason. It's just not any kind of higher power. It's this one guy pulling the strings in this as the outcome of this multiversal war. And that takes away an avenue of access to the world of meaning, to the world of God, that previous movies had taken for granted.
I have to say, this brings me to a sticky thing about multiverses in general, which I'm sure that you have meditated or reflected upon deeply, and I'd like to ask you about it. There is a way in which, on the philosophical level, the multiverse is actually a solution to a problem, which is that the universe seems to have a beginning, and anything that has a beginning has a cause, and that would point to God, and that one of the ways that people solve this philosophical problem of the universe seeming to point to God when they may prefer an atheistic explanation is the multiverse. That is, the multiverse is itself a kind of tool to avoid God.
It can be, but at the same time, I would recommend that Christians not be too cautious and skeptical about the multiverse for apologetical reasons. And not just because of the need of the universe to have a beginning, but also because of arguments around what we call the fine-tuning of the universe, or its anthropic coincidences, that we have a universe that's so friendly to life that it can produce creatures like us. Some non-believers will say, well, maybe there's a multiverse and different universes have different properties and we're just the local winner, the lucky winner. And I understand the resistance to that, but also consider this. And I grew up in a Protestant milieu, and I was exposed to the kind of young earth creationism that rejects evolution and says, well, since the universe is less than 10,000 years old, there hasn't been time for the universe to evolve in the way that, for life to evolve in the way that the scientists say. And so what we wind up doing is, in order to defend God's honor, we diminish the scope of his creative self-expression. A universe that's almost 14 billion years old is a more majestic thing in a way than a universe that's just a few thousand years old, even if it means that God didn't personally design each creature in an immediate way, rather than in an immediate way through processes of time. So, and you also look at how our Earth, it has just the right qualities for life among the 10 billion planets that we know about in the observable universe. I don't want to say God couldn't create a multiverse because it makes apologetics a little harder. I want to leave the door open for God to do as much as he wants.
Well, maybe you'll find this comforting then, because I just have negative feelings about the multiverse, and I don't know what that's. It's just a feeling. A feeling doesn't mean anything. It's just a negative feeling, and maybe it comes from that suspicion that it's just a tool. And so I asked a friend of this show, Karen Oberg, who's an astrophysicist at Harvard and also a Thomistic scholar, I said, she's an astrophysicist. I said, is there a multiverse? Is that real? She said, I don't know. And I wanted it to be, no, this is impossible because of climate. And she said, I don't know. And she said, nobody knows. So a little humility is probably very valuable in this instance.
Yeah. I think it behooves us to be open-minded and not to make overly confident statements about the way that we think things are, because the evidence isn't there yet. When, scientific discoveries over the next 10, 20, 50 years, 100 years, could then undermine that position.
So you said you're there in Spokane to give a talk about this. So what was it that you wanted to draw out for your listeners about this multiverse of multiverses we now live in the media world?
So I wanted to look at the phenomenon of multiverses in superhero movies specifically, primarily in the MCU and in the Spider-Verse movies. And I wanted to take a look at how that impacts the moral worlds in which these universes occur. Before the last break, I talked about how I think that the way that the Loki miniseries has explored the idea of the time variance authority and the way that events in the MCU have been scripted up until now is a significant generator of nihilism. So in order for events, one way that events have to have meaning is if we leave room for God to not necessarily to intervene in direct ways, but to allow things to come together in ways that serve his purposes. And if there's a level of management between us and God, then we wind up in what our friend Jimmy Akin has called an epistemically perverse situation, a situation where we don't have access to the kind of knowledge that we need in order to say things about God. I think this is where, I think this is where the Spider-Verse movie right now is hanging between two possibilities. The new Spider-Verse movie, Across the Spider-Verse, has introduced a multiversal policing organization, not unlike the TVA, but this one is called the Spider Society. It's made up of all different spider power people from all different dimensions. And they have this idea about canon events, about the way that the story is supposed to go. And the upshot of it is that our young hero, Miles Morales, has to accept the fact that his father is supposed to die. And he doesn't accept that. So here I think we have a kind of humanism versus nihilism going head to head. And since we don't have the third part yet, we just have to hope that producers Chris Miller and Phil Lord that they will that they know where they're going with this, and I think that they do. So I have confidence in them, and I have confidence that the story is not going to affirm this this canon events approach to things, but we'll approach the idea that every life has value, and that if you have the opportunity to save somebody's life, that you should do it.
I wonder if that is part of my feeling, and I admit the feeling to you without having any justification for it. I don't know why I feel but I never am thrilled when the answer in a movie is a multiverse. I always feel a little bit like, oh, here we go, multiverse. And do you think part of that might be that we do come around, as we do in the Loki series, to a possible nihilism, or a possible where we can't know what's going on. We can't know which thing is right and which thing is wrong. We just don't have access to real knowledge. So I guess do what you want, do what you will.
So this is a very interesting question. One of the connections that a lot of the speakers here at Gonzaga University at the Faith Film Philosophy seminar that's going on right now have drawn out. A lot of them have been talking about multiverse movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once in connection with Kohelet, with the book of Ecclesiastes, and the idea of vanities, all is vanity, because that's a conclusion that is explicitly drawn out in Everything Everywhere All at Once. The idea that as the antagonist, who turns out to be the protagonist's daughter, says, when you put everything on a bagel, and the everything bagel becomes a metaphor, and in its circularity becomes a metaphor for infinity. When you put everything on a bagel, then the truth becomes clear that nothing matters. Everything Everywhere All at Once is a movie that really confronts this idea head on, that nothing matters, and affirms the idea that the love that we have for one another, that being kind, that sticking with each other through the mundane things of life is what matters. There's a wonderful line in the movie where a version of the heroine's husband says to a version of the heroine, in another universe, I would have really enjoyed doing laundry and taxes with you. And that's the life of the heroine. And the heroine's life in the movie is dominated by laundry and taxes, and the idea that in those mundane things of life, the multiverse has the power to affirm those things, not just to undermine them or take away the meaning.
Deacon Stephen Gradanas is our guest. The number is 888-318-7884. Have you noticed this proliferation of multiverses in media? If you have and you'd like to talk about it, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884.
Why We're Catholic is the one book you can hand to anyone to invite them into or back to the Catholic faith. With more than 400,000 copies sold, Trent Horn's book has had a #1 ranking on Amazon.com for 5 years running. Now available in softcover, bulk cases, ebook, and on Audible. Find out what the excitement is all about. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com or visit whywearecatholic.com.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made, and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answer's own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, enjoying an afternoon conversation with Deacon Stephen Gradanas, who's out here on this coast. Usually we are speaking to one another across the country. Now we're just north and south of one another. And we're talking a bit about the multiverses and all the multiverses in films. Deacon Gradanas is a longtime film critic, a member of the New York Film Critics Circle, and a longtime or for more than a decade, he was the film critic for the National Catholic Register. If you've got questions or you want to just get in on the conversation, 888-318-7884. I want to ask more about these multiverses, but I also want to let callers have a chance with Deacon Gradanas. Tom's in I was having trouble there. I was going Hawaii, but it's actually Tom in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. I was trying to put you in Oahu, Tom. I apologize for that. I read wrong. Go ahead with your question for Deacon Gradanas.
Okay. The movie Nefarious. All I want to know is, what do you think about it? And do you have some comments and so forth? That's all I want to know. And I'll hang up.
Okay. So I saw Nefarious earlier this year. I actually saw it ahead of doing a Theology on Tap event at the Diocese of Trenton in New Jersey, where I'm from. and that was on exorcism and demons and demonic possession in the movies. So since it was a movie that came out this year and it's a faith-based film and it's been getting a lot of attention from Catholics, I wanted to make sure that I saw it. I think that Sean Patrick Flannery, who plays the possessed murderer and who therefore also plays the demon, to me, that name brings back memories of young Indiana Jones. I think he does an outstanding job. I think he makes the part very entertaining, and I think that the dialogue between him and the psychiatrist played by Jordan Belfi is it's entertaining. It's certainly very well informed by Catholic theology and by the kind of the cultural consensus among many exorcists, at least exorcists who I've talked to. So I did enjoy watching it. I thought myself that the demon was a little straightforward for being a member of the tribe of the Prince of Lies. There was less subterfuge and less deceptiveness. Sometimes I felt like the filmmakers were kind of putting their words in the demon's mouth in a way that, I've never been present at an exorcism, but I did do a lot of study on it and ahead of doing this talk. So, but to me, that was something that stood out. Another, I thought that the theology and the head games that the demon played with the guy were interesting and worked dramatically. I didn't think that the whole business about the demon's efforts to subvert Christianity with a satanic Bible that he was going to try to get this guy to publish. I thought that for a demon with that much knowledge and that much advanced work put in, his plan fell apart really quickly because it just wasn't that well constructed in the first place. As an excuse for the movie, for putting these two characters head to head and having them talk to one another, that part I thought worked. But the underlying plot, the idea that the demon was trying to do this thing and subvert the Christian religion and introduce a new religion based on defiance of God, was unconvincing for me. But Catholics who are interested in faith-based films and would be interested in seeing a movie like that, I think you'll probably enjoy it.
Tom, thank you very, very much. Thanks for the call. Do you have a favorite of the demon movies, of the possession movies? Do you have one that you, Deacon Gradanis, that you go, that's the pinnacle of the art form?
Well, I mean, it's hard to think that at least in the top five you wouldn't have the original classic William Friedkin, The Exorcist,
The Exorcist,
from 1973. I think Scott Derrickson, who directed Doctor Strange, we mentioned him earlier in the show, he is a Christian. He's done a couple of good ones, The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Deliver Us from Evil. Those are the ones that immediately come to my mind.
Oh, okay. We're talking with Deacon Gradanis about multiverses and the many multiverses that you find at the multiplex. Oh, look what I just did there. These days, or on TV, or wherever there's stories, there seem to be not just one but many universes interacting with one another, sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose, and then the hijinks ensue. In the Marvel universe, you were talking about how there's a tendency, and I think it's very much worth talking about the Marvel universe. It really is about the most popular thing that ever, if you add them all up, that ever happened in the movies anywhere.
It's incredible. It's unprecedented. It's absolutely unprecedented.
Yeah.
And I grew up reading the comics. I have a comics collection with thousands of comics. So when it started, I was just, this is so great. I have to admit, I've long since begun to feel the kind of the superhero fatigue.
Yeah.
I would like to see more genres return to theaters.
Yeah. Yes. You get to where maybe that'll be on video before too long. I'm so happy they've got another one. Maybe it'll come out on video.
But I should say, the Spider-Verse movies, it will take a long time before I get tired of those movies if they maintain the high level of quality that they have for the first ones.
And that's not Disney or Marvel. That's somebody else making them, right?
Yeah. The movies are produced by Sony Columbia, which owns the rights to the Spider-Man character. When he appears in the MCU, it's by license from Sony, who actually owns the rights to that character.
But in the MCU, you did talk about this kind of grand, constantly unfolding new levels of the multiverse, and the way that it can breed a kind of nihilism or cynicism. Is there a danger in this kind of habit in this movie franchise that what's really being done is that our relationship or our children's relationship with God is being undermined?
So I think that can be the case. And where I actually see that being the case in the MCU, it's an extension of something that the MCU has been doing for a long time. It actually goes back to the original Iron Man, when Tony finds out that his Obadiah Stane, a colleague of his father, who's kind of like a father figure to him, has been undermining his company and secretly selling weapons to terrorists. And then it continues with the character of Nick Fury, who seems like one of the good guys and who is one of the good guys, but he's been lying to the Avengers in the first Avengers movie about SHIELD being involved in clean energy research, when what they're really doing is developing super weapons. This theme that the seemingly respectable, trustworthy, patriarchal, powerful father figure, the establishment figure, that he has a secret agenda. He can't be trusted. He hides his motives. It continues up the line to the father of Thor, Odin, of Asgard, who's pretty much a literal god almost, who turns out he's presented as this kindly patriarch and even as an arbiter of moral worthiness. But then we find out that the foundation of Asgard is all this stuff about conquest and bloodshed and maybe genocide.
I remember the almost like church-like art had other art underneath it.
Yes.
That's a very powerful image of, under this thing that you thought was good, there's this other thing that ain't good at all.
And that theme builds all the way to Chloe Zhao's Eternals, which starts out with a literal creation myth that actually quotes the book of Genesis. It starts in the beginning, and then we learn come the Celestials, and the prime celestial, whose name is Adashem, creates the first sun and brings light into the world. And so he's presented explicitly in these very godlike terms. His creatures, the Eternals, are the first superheroes, and they're almost angelic figures fighting these almost demonic figures called deviants. And then this too all turns out to be a lie. It seems as if Adashem is very altruistically concerned with intelligent life, but then we find out that this story, which comes from the very fertile mind of comics legend Jack Kirby, the Earth, a planet like ours with intelligent life, is just an egg incubating a baby celestial. And races like ours, intelligent races, are just part of the incubation process. So when the baby hatches, of course, when there is enough humanity to finish incubating the baby and the baby hatches, then the planet is dead and left behind. And now the Eternals rebel against Adashem when they find this out, but it raises a fundamental question. If we were created for this purpose, then who are we? Who is anyone to say that it's wrong? Again, we're in what Jimmy Akin calls an epistemologically perverse situation. We have this sense that our lives have meaning and value intrinsically. But if we're just part of a celestial incubation process, then our thoughts and feelings about what matters and what is truly valuable may just be epiphenomena of that reproductive process. And right. So it takes away our ability to have any confidence in our moral judgments.
And yet it takes away our confidence to have any moral judgments, except that you can't tell a good story if there's not good guys and bad guys. And so this God who was supposed to be good, who now we see is bad, we don't shift to being bad now. We go, oh, he's bad, and then we fight against him.
Which is actually a very old idea. It goes back to the old Germanic heroic tradition. This is the tradition of Beowulf, of the Battle of Maldon, where the universe is seen as hostile to human beings, and yet human beings band together in solidarity to defy the universe. I think that can be a noble and beautiful thing. But when you get the humanistic ethos and the humanistic or the life-affirming cosmos in unison, as in the Christian worldview, then you have something really powerful. What happens so often in the MCU is that a nihilistic cosmos is pitted against a humanistic ethos. And I think the ethos is still valuable. So for instance, in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange has a chance to save the multiverse by killing one innocent human being. And in another movie, if this were a utilitarian movie, he might do it. But if he does that, the movie's premise is that that way is wrong, and it can't explain that. But that idea is still there.
So it's strange that the people who are writing these movies live in an ethical universe that they refuse to represent
because they don't know how.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right.
This is where a movie like Iron Man benefits from its small scale. You can write a line like, "I shouldn't be alive unless it was for a reason."
Right.
And you don't have to supply the reason. It's okay. We'll take that on faith. We'll let you make that assertion, and we can supply our own idea about the reason. But when you make the story so big that now you're telling us who created life on Earth, and it's not in his image and it's not out of love, now we have a problem.
Yes. You know, that when you say that about Iron Man, I got to say, Jon Favreau, this is one of his talents, is to bring things down to a human level, maintain an epic scale. But I think he kind of saved Star Wars, because Star Wars kept getting bigger and weirder. And then he said, let me just make a show about one guy, a Mandalorian, and we'll just follow that guy in this big universe. That does seem to be a particular talent of his, is to scale it to a human level.
Yes, that's true. And when you don't do that, you need a very different sort of talent to tell a story on a cosmic scale and make us believe that there is meaning in it. That's a different skill. And I don't know. I mean, you could say, you could look at, to switch to a completely different genre, take a look at Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. And there's a movie that deals both with intimate life on a family scale, and then also with the whole cosmic story of the universe, from the Big Bang to the heat death of the universe and beyond into eternity. And he really does imbue it with a Christian worldview in a way that is extremely powerful. Can you do that kind of thing in a comic book superhero movie? The jury's still out. And one of the reasons why I have hope for the Spider-Verse is I don't think that there's ever going to be a moment where they ask that question, or they bring in, somebody who looks an awful lot like a stand-in for God.
Yeah. We'll take a break. We'll take some calls for Deacon Stephen Gradanis when we come back. We're talking about this multiverse of multiverses we live in, this narrative device, the multiverse, which has taken over so much of our media. Your calls, your questions, your comments, welcome. 888-318-7884.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and his gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
EWTN has just increased my faith so much. I am a cradle Catholic, and I thought I knew my faith very well. When Mother Angelica passed away, and it was so much in the news, I learned all about EWTN and started listening all the time. And my eyes have been opened to my faith so much.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks for being here with us on this Friday afternoon, or maybe Friday evening, or if you're listening in the Philippines or anywhere on the other side of the date line, Saturday morning. Happy Saturday morning to you. We're talking about movies, and this is more and more movies are a global kind of community almost, that I go almost anywhere in the world and talk about Thor or talk about Captain America, and it's going to be as if I was talking about Coca-Cola. It's everybody knows what you're talking about, and so this is not just a U.S. thing when we talk about these giant Disney and Marvel movies and the DC movies and the various other things that we've had the opportunity to talk about with Deacon Stephen Greydonis, and this theme or this device of the multiverse has become prevalent. As a matter of fact, it's very rare. It's getting to be rarer and rarer to run into these large-scale movies that don't have some multiverse associated with them. Deacon Greydonis is at Gonzaga University out here on the West Coast, up in Washington State, and they're talking about these things. Just tell us again a little bit about the seminar. What's Gonzaga doing right now?
So we're doing this week. They have a faith, film, and philosophy seminar, which Gonzaga University's Faith and Reason Institute puts on every year. And this year's seminar is devoted to the topic of multiverses and alternate realities in movies. Robert K. Johnson was here yesterday. He did a talk on Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm doing a public talk today at 7 p.m. here at Gonzaga on what I'm calling, the name of my talk is Crisis of Meaning on Infinite Earths, which is a very nerdy allusion to an influential DC Comics storyline in the 80s, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis of Meaning is the title of my talk. And we're talking about the kinds of issues that we've been talking about here today, about the tendency in multiverse movies toward nihilism and how some movies and franchises can get away from that.
Again, you're welcome to call and get in on the conversation with Deacon Greydonis. 888-318-7884 is the number. Joel is in Ontario, Canada, listening on the station of the Cross, 101.7 FM. Joel, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Deacon Greydonis.
Hi. Okay. So I helped with a story for the video game called Half-Life. Okay, and I kind of rolled myself into a corner because I try to do the multiverse thing, but in a Time Lord kind of way, we call it a Doctor Who kind of way. Okay, where it's as a man that is traveling time. Okay, and trying to influence things. Okay, but his name is in the game. His name is G-Man. Okay, because he was a geologist in the past. Okay, before he got his superpowers. Okay. Okay. And I'm trying to first end the story of Half-Life 3 with with the G-Man being arrested and losing his powers. Okay, and also before that happens, his plan goes through and the Combine is defeated. Pretty much, it's like a interdimensional species that is trying to it has taken over the world, but they're expanding their their empire. Okay, but a man named Gordon Freeman has
Can I ask what the question is?
Hang on, Joel. Deacon Greydonis would like to ask you.
I just wanted to ask what is the question?
Okay, so how would I go about to end the story in such a way that I guess two timelines would work together to tell the story that humanity has a purpose and it's not nihilistic,
Very good. That's a very clear question. Yes, Deacon Greydonis.
So the reason that I'm laughing is that I tell stories to my kids and my nephews every summer. We do an exercise in it's kind of like a role-playing game. But it's not gaming because we're not rolling dice or anything. But I give them all characters, and sometimes we do multiversal stuff. And when I have a problem, there's a certain person, and I've already mentioned him on this show, that I go to for help. But we can't talk about that because he'll only perform that service for me. But
I think I know.
My advice to you would be this. If you want to tell a story in the multiverse and you want to make it Catholic, I would do what Tolkien does in The Lord of the Rings in focusing on the moral outlook of Catholicism more than doctrine. I would try to, because Tolkien works doctrine into his larger legendarium, but within the world of The Lord of the Rings, there's no explicit religion. He focuses on telling a story that's Catholic in the morality of the characters and in the way that the universe functions. So I would look for the ways to work the hand of God into the story in serendipity, in chance occurrences that work out, like Tony surviving that explosion and then surviving being captured by terrorists so that he can go on to become Iron Man. That's where I would look for God in a story like that. And then no matter what dimension of the multiverse that you're in, you're going to want to make sure that the same moral rules apply. So you can have different physical rules, but the moral universe should be the same anywhere you go in the multiverse. Those are the things that I would look at.
Thank you, Joel. I hope that was helpful to you. Deacon Gray Donis in Spokane, Washington at Gonzaga University, talking about the multiverse as a technique and the consequences, the implications of this having become such a large part of our kind of movie vocabulary now. And so we're getting near the end, Deacon Gray Donis, so I want you to kind of give me the takeaway. One thing I would like you to tell me is there a kind of law of diminishing returns on all of this? At a certain point, do you think we'll just tire of the multiverse, or is this a permanent feature now of our storytelling?
Oh, I think that as with other trends in storytelling, like zombies and I think that these things do come in waves. I think that the multiverse will eventually become less prominent than it is now. As far as diminishing returns in our experience goes, that depends on the skill of the storytellers. I think I'm already not so excited about the MCU multiverse, but like I said, I think the Spider-Verse will continue to fascinate me for a long time to come.
And as, like you said, that has to do with the storytellers themselves. So maybe you could give us some idea of what you, as a person who has thought about these things and goes to the seminars and reads the books and the papers and all that, when we encounter the multiverse, what are the things that we might be looking for, that we might ask ourselves? That, I mean, you don't want to take people out of the story necessarily. That's the joy of it, is to get lost in the story. But still, as we reflect on these stories, what might be some things that we would bring to bear in our reflections?
I would begin where I begin as a critic, which is first of all, trying to accept and receive the story on its own terms, look at what the storyteller is interested in and what they're doing with the tool, with the multiverse in this case. But then I would also be attentive to my own spontaneous responses. If a story engages me, if it moves me, if it bores me, if it excites me, I want to ask myself why. You have to trust your responses to these things. I mean, you interrogate them too, but begin by trusting them. If you find something beautiful, the good, the true, and the beautiful are avenues to God. And so if something is beautiful, then there's a reason why it's beautiful. And there's probably something you can articulate about what it tells us about God. So those are the things that I look for. I've been doing this from the time that I first watched the Jim Caviezel time-bending movie Frequency, and I said, what is it about the way that this movie uses time travel that I find so powerful? And it led me into all kinds of ideas about redemption and resurrection and the undoing of the wrongs of the past. All of those things go into it, and I think that something like the multiverse can be used in ways that are like that as well.
That's so interesting that you mentioned time travel, and I will have to interrogate myself about this, maybe on a plane flight to New Zealand I've got coming up. But that time travel doesn't bother me. It doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies the way the multiverse does. And I don't know why that might be.
Have you seen either of the Spider-Verse movies?
No, you've recommended them so many times, and I was trying to avoid having to admit that I still have not seen them, Deacon, but I have not. Maybe I'll get one for the flight.
Your predecessor on this show had a movie like that with me. He always used to ask me if I had seen Departures, and I never had. And somebody at the conference mentioned it, and I still haven't seen it. It's still on the list.
All right. Well, maybe my my hesitation or whatever my emotional response to multiverses is will be tempered if I watch the Spider-Man movies. Deacon Stephen Graydonis, we're very grateful for your time. May we and our listeners have your blessing before we go.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you. The Lord be gracious unto you and give you his peace now and forever. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey, amen. Can we still find you at Decent Films or not there anymore?
Always. I'll always be there.
All right. Check them out at Decent Films. That'll do it for us. We'll see you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.